At 7:48 p.m., I call to order this meeting of the 105th Undergraduate Senate. Will the clerks please call the roll?
Okay, you're gonna have to bear with me. I'm doing this for the first time. Senator Bennett. Senator Haugen. Senator Hendricks. Senator Henson. Senator Morinville. Senator Nugent. And then Senator Taylor Nugent. Senator Ophi. Senator Parapelli. Senator Pierce. Senator Womble. Senator Ellis. Senator Gary.
Here.
Senator Kim. Senator Stanton. Senator Forbes. Senator Guskowitz. Senator Jones. Senator Vernon. Senator Wilson. Senator Alexander. Senator Brandon. Senator Grimm. Senator Manna. Senator McDermott.
Here.
Senator Nanduri. Senator Smith. Senator Sodano. Senator Flynn. Senator Langley. Senator Longo. Senator Aurora. Senator Airedale. Senator Jessup. Senator McClanahan.
Here.
Senator Palakuri. Senator Schneider. Senator Visp. Senator Adams. Senator Barrick.
Present.
Senator Jane. Senator Leonard. And Senator Polak.
Seeing as we have a quorum, we will proceed with the rest of tonight's meeting. At this time, is there a motion with regards to the minutes of the previous meeting? Is there a motion with regards to the minutes of the previous meeting?
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been seconded. Without objection, the minutes will be adopted. We are now in line for reports of the officers of the Senate, beginning with my report. I had hoped to write out a more detailed report for y'all. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to do that today, so I will do my best to provide y'all some updates. First up, I have been working with the Wilson Library archivist to transfer over all of the records of the 99th through 104th Senates. That process is done now. The records have been transferred to their custody. I just have to sign some paperwork, which y'all will be voting on authorizing me to do later this meeting. I have hired staff. You will see them around the room. They are all amazing and overly qualified for all their positions. They will do a great job, I hope. We will have to fill some continued vacancies. There is a rolling application open, so do promote that as you can. Those are the two major updates from my end. I don't really have anything else at this time. I'll yield to any questions. Seeing no questions, the Speaker Pro Tem is recognized for their report.
Here, I'll just use this one over here. Well, it's nice to be back in person for, I think, the third time here in the 105th Senate. Over the past month, I've hired some staff for my office. I have a new chief of staff, and I'm still working on hiring some more people for the office of the Speaker Pro Tem. Other than that, the Select Committee to investigate the REAL program has met twice. Last time we had hearings and testimony from witnesses. I'd like to thank President Everett and Treasurer Grodzki for being there as witnesses. And I'll yield to any questions at this time. All right, seeing none.
At this time, I'm recognizing the finance chair for their report.
Good evening, everyone. Let's see. The large item of business at the end of this meeting is the Budget Act. This is the culmination of the tireless work of the Finance Committee, over 21 hours of hearings from organizations over the past few weeks. And that is what will be heard at the end of this meeting. Also, this weekend, applications for the subsequent cycle of appropriations will open. If you are a member of an organization or know people who are and they would like to request funding but have not during this budget cycle, they are more than welcome to apply during that cycle that opens this weekend. If you have any questions relating to the budget bill itself, I ask that you hold those until the budget bill is presented later tonight. But with that, I'll yield to any questions. Seeing none.
We will now move to the report of the Rules and Judiciary Committee Chair.
Nothing much to report. R&J met last week and we heard a number of nominees, some of which have been reported without prejudice, and we will be hearing tonight. That's all. Any questions?
We will now move to the report from the Oversight and Advocacy Committee Chair.
Yeah, not much to report. We looked at some nominees last week, most of which were reported favorably tonight. So you'll probably get to hear from the rest. Probably talk more about our thoughts on the budget bill, but especially as O&A chair, I kind of want to start off the meeting by just talking about a few of those concerns that O&A has as a committee, especially speaking as chair. I'm a little nervous about some of the points that we'll talk about later, but I at least wanted to say that during my introduction. So any questions? Seeing none.
We will now move to the report from the Ethics Committee Chair.
Hi, everyone. First off, it's great to actually be in person at last and see so many people here. I'm glad we made quorum. As is customary, I am now going to list out all the people who have lost voting privileges, those who are having strict warnings, and those who have light warnings. I will explain what those mean after I list everyone's name. So please pay attention, because if you hear your name and you think I did something wrong, I'd rather you reach out now than after I strip your voting privileges. Regarding people who have lost full voting privileges, Dean Pierce is the only one. Regarding people who are out there warning, this means that if you have one more unexcused absence from any meeting for the rest of the session, you lose voting privileges until you can submit to me a plan on how you're going to make sure that you attend Senate meetings, and that plan gets approved by the Senate. These senators are Kellen Wen-Rom, Ethelyn Ofai, Senator Womble, Senator Manna, Senator Sedano, Senator Jane. Now, people who are at 6 attendance points, which is just, be careful, you're getting close. Oh, wait, oh, that's ignoring. I'll email you. I don't have my spreadsheet set up prettily, so it's not right to the number. Otherwise, as always, please just email or fill out the attendance form if you're going to miss it. If you're here, you're probably not one of the people who's causing attendance problems, but we want to make sure that we always have quorum, and that just helps. Thank you all. If I have any questions, now's the time.
We will now move to the report from the Joint Governance Council member at large.
I hope that wasn't me. Hi, everyone. The JGC was supposed to meet last week, but we didn't meet quorum, so we only heard reports. Yeah, that's about it. Any questions? Seeing none.
We got the mics turned off. Remember to turn off if you're not using your mic. Interesting. All right, we'll now move to the report from the members of the Commission on Campus Equality and Student Equity.
Yes, so the commission is not, good evening, y'all. The commission has not formally met, but I've been in contact with fellow Commissioner Lauren, and in general, through our seats on DASAC and PAC, we met once for each. I'll defer most of those comments or updates to Vice President Siegel. For the commission itself, we have been working closely to collaborate with the executive branch with a number of different departments from the DEI department, the Office of State and External Affairs, on a number of projects. They're currently in their like infancy stages, so I can update you more as we progress. But the point is we are beginning these projects in collaborations between the executive department, and I look forward to continuing these collaborations as the year progresses. Are there any questions? Seeing none.
Senator Langley, do you have anything you want to add? With that, we'll move to the report of the USG president.
Is this working? Can y'all hear me?
President Everett, if you'd like to come to the front, the Sergeant at Arms could hand you a microphone.
Hello? Okay, great. Hope you all are doing well. I know this past few weeks have been very, very busy. Won't be before you long, but do have a few updates. Looking where to start. So we just opened our second round of branch applications last week. So looking forward to getting some more folks in the space. We also had an event this past Saturday with UNC's Sickle Cell Comprehensive Organization, just getting some support there as well. So looking forward to having some new active ways to engage with the campus student body. It's also Latinx Heritage Month, so shout out to all who celebrate, as well as Yom Kippur as of yesterday. Just to change courses really quickly, and this time I did want to speak about the budget bill coming before you all tonight. First, thank you all to the Finance Committee, to everyone else. I know it's a huge labor of love and hard work, so thank you for everything there. Just being transparent, I do have a few concerns about the bill, hoping to bring before you all today. Article 2, Section 1104, entitled the Town Relations Act, requires my Director of State and External Affairs to publicly oppose the Chapel Hill Town Social Ordinance. We've already been having those conversations. I think that's a very important decision to be made, but I do believe that that's a decision that the director should make and working with her on that. So I am concerned about that piece of legislation. Director Khan and her team worked very, very hard, and she is here today. So I'm asking you all to get rid of that amendment if possible. Article 2, Section 1106, entitled the Unified Crisis Response Act, says that undergraduate student government can't speak about the 2 acts of violence, gun violence that occurred on campus these past few weeks. This is a policy that not only impacts myself, but for you all. I mean, we all are in these spaces to support and to advocate and to use our voices. And so just wanting to be very, very clear about those. You know, for example, I've already been called on for a safety and security presentation with the Board of Visitors this past Friday. This upcoming Friday, excuse me. There are just so many ways in which our voices are needed. And I really would like to have some more flexibility in terms of advocating in these ways because we all collectively experience that. So it's important that we stand up. So that's a concern. I'm also concerned about, again, Article 2, Section 1107. I understand and recognize the importance of having folks like myself and folks in EBO and the Everett administration or executive branch in general understanding the code. But at this point in the year, when we're very far along into that process, it can kind of be difficult to kind of have to go back and make those changes. So I appreciate a little bit more grace there in that amendment as well. And lastly, just some other general stipulations and changes within Article 2 regarding stipends. Just concerned about Honor Court, as we all have a duty to support them as well, and concerned about what that means for them for their summer stipends. So don't want anyone shortchanged while recognizing that there is some financial accessibility in these stipended positions, including myself. So a lot of people rely on those stipends. So wanting to take time to really go through all of those proposals together. Just in general, a few places within Article 2 that are very challenging to myself and to my team. So I urge you all and ask you all to please consider making those changes. And I look forward to working with you all now, either whether that's tonight or throughout these next few weeks to kind of make those changes to the budget bill. But thank you again to everyone who worked on it. It means a lot. I know it means a lot to the students themselves. So thank you all for that. And lastly, I do have Board of Trustees meetings starting tomorrow throughout the rest of the week. So I'm gonna have to head out of here soon to prepare for that. But that was all I had to say. Any questions from anyone?
Regarding these policies, you have questions about, were you contacted or kept in the loop about any of these? Or are they kind of all spun on you with this new budget?
Yeah, I was not aware of these, but I will say I've had some great conversations with some folks in the space. I'm very grateful for everyone listening to all of my questions and all of my comments as well. But definitely would appreciate some of those things in Article 2 being changed.
Is there any part of Article 2 you would like to see remain the same?
That's a really good question. Still going through that entirely. I will say in general was concerned because while the budget bill is so important, I don't necessarily agree that that's a space for policy work. I think that should be about getting students their money that they applied for and recognizing the process already has been like very difficult on everyone. So I would prefer that to be the focus, but of course respecting the discretion of everyone involved in that process. So I think I'll just say in general, some of the amendments that were there were just a little challenging. So more so focused on those concerns and how they impact us all. Any other questions about anything? Yeah, just in general, some of the stipends, just concerned about what that means for them for their summer stipends and just being cognizant of financial accessibility in these roles. Is that a question? Okay. Any other questions?
I guess my one question is, we obviously talked about some of this stuff in the finance meeting last Tuesday and made some changes. And I guess my question is, why weren't some of these amendments brought up then? Because that like technically in committee is when we typically try to make these amendments, and we made some of the amendments that were discussed. Was this just like, you were warned and only had, some of the stuff down that you wanted to change?
Yeah, it was all sprung on me very, very quickly. And so kind of to paint the scene for you all, heard about, the budget bill and some of those policies very last minute. So kind of having going to some other meetings and so to delay some of my other responsibilities to address that primary concern. But just as well, I mean, it's a very large piece of legislation. So going through that and taking care to be cognizant of the work you all put in. So I think it's just part of it. It was sprung on me very, very quickly. So, but yeah, I'm grateful for also the changes made in the committee as well. So thank you all for advocating for the executive branch. I appreciate it. Any other questions? Seeing none. Okay, great.
We will now move to the report of the USG Vice President.
Hello. Okay, awesome. Hey, it's good to see you guys. For those of you I haven't met in person, my name is Becca. I'm undergraduate student body vice president. Really excited to work with you. First and foremost, thank you all so much for your work with external appointments over the course of this summer and this week. We are moving through them really quickly. I feel like we're in a really good spot. The majority of the ones that need to be filled in order to function have been filled. So thank you all so much for your diligent questions and reviews of all of those nominees. I've really appreciated getting to work with you and getting to know a lot of you. In that same vein, Faculty Council has about 17 external appointments that they specifically request, all of which have been filled. I'm meeting with Beth Morocco, the head of Faculty Council, next week to discuss student representation in that space. So the faculty, they have like a student government equivalent. We have students that represent us in a lot of those spaces. So I'll be meeting with her next week. And then Joshua and Lauren sort of touched on this, but we did have our first meeting of the Dean of Arts and Sciences Advisory Committee and the Provost Advisory Committee. Thank you to you guys so much for being there, for representing your council, and also to every other member of Senate who's a part of those committees. They're two of my favorite things that I get to do. So I'm just going to hit a few policy highlights from both of those. So starting with the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, that's Jim White. He oversees the College of Arts and Sciences that most of you are enrolled in. The first thing is we are setting up advisory councils for the head of biology, chemistry, physics, econ, and potentially math to talk to those faculty folks and be like, we need you to actually talk to students a little bit more about some of these policies. So I'll be attending a meeting of the chemistry department next week to sort of hear how they do student advocacy to incorporate student voices. I would really particularly like to connect with senators in STEM if you guys are interested in being involved in that. So this is me. Come talk to me afterwards. Awesome. I see you. Next, over the summer, the provost had a generative AI committee. So we had a few students who were able to attend those meetings. You may have seen in your syllabi, but there is now AI policy. It's being curated a little bit more specifically to refer to the College of Arts and Sciences. So that'll be rolled out in the spring. The Asian American student like major and minor group are still working on getting that established. They're working with the dean of the college on hiring some folks who can specialize on Asian American studies. So really excited about that. Working with Joshua to make sure that there's good student government representation. Let's see. Oh, okay. So working with the dean of the college to consolidate a list of doors that didn't lock during the events on campus this month and last month. So a little bit of information that the dean shared with us and also in general conversations, but not all of our doors are centralized. So there isn't necessarily like a single switch that can be flipped in order to lock all of our doors at once. So we're working with folks in student safety, in security, with Speaker Gary to make sure that we have a centralized system so that when we need a crisis response, we're able to safely lock doors and make sure everybody has that space. But the dean of the college has been phenomenal with that. And then the last two things from that meeting, one thing I'm really excited about is we are going to have a wait list for all of our College of Arts and Science classes next year, which is really exciting. So basically, like we will be able to accurately gauge how many people are interested in taking a class. So I'm really excited about that change. I think it'll be good for all of us. And then we will be meeting with Chloe Russell, who is the Dean of Advising at our not next meeting, but one after, to discuss AP and IB prioritization in the enrollment process, because right now it's a little bit convoluted. From the Provost Advisory Committee, we are beginning hiring for the School of Civic Life and Leadership. That is in the budget, there's money for it. They're looking to hire about 7 to 10 faculty members, and the provost has promised to kind of keep us up to date through that process. I'll have more information for you. Joshua and Lauren can also speak to that, as well as Damon. Is there anybody else on Senate? I think that's it, who's a member of that committee, but we are keeping our eyes on that process and trying to stay as informed as possible. And then finally, we are still working on III policy to make sure that that is like being improved. So I'm meeting with Megan Plenge next week, who's in charge of reforming that program, to make sure that like III classes are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I never took one, so I couldn't speak to it, but I'm assuming for those of you who are in one or who have taken one, there is room for improvement. And then the very last few things, I'm serving as a member of the Basic Needs Task Force along with Chief of Staff Chris Williams, who will be here later. I met with Jackie Copeland to talk about rising textbook costs and how we can help students afford their textbook. I'm working with President Everett and the University Archives to transfer Eve Carson, who is a former student body president, to transfer all of her works into the University Archives. So really excited about that. If you don't know Eve Carson, she was an amazing, amazing student body president whose life was ended tragically way too young. So you can read more about her. Her archives are currently housed in our student government suite, but they will soon be moved into the university archives. And then the last thing, I do want to echo the remarks of President Everett regarding tonight's bill. I think more than anything with legislation like this, we have an opportunity to communicate as the executive branch with Senate. And I want to make sure we're prioritizing those channels of communication. I get to work with so many of you in my capacity as vice president. So continuing to do that, prioritizing that and making sure that we're able to do the jobs that we're all here to do, that we spend excessive amounts of our free time doing is my top priority. Okay, that was a lot. I'm happy to answer any questions. Okay. Yeah. Yes, I would love to. So Emily Smithers is in charge of the Eve Carson Scholarship Fund. There's a scholarship part and then a programming part. And President Everett and I are working on an executive order for the Every Moment Counts Week to spend a week in November remembering Eve, commemorating her life, putting on different events to celebrate all the wonderful, wonderful things that she did on this campus. She touched every part of campus. The executive branch is going to be working to make sure that her memory is recorded and celebrated on this campus. Is there anything you wanted to add? Okay, perfect. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
We'll now hear the report from the USG Treasurer, who has kindly provided us with a slideshow.
Mr. Speaker, question of privilege. If anyone has a microphone at their desk and the light on it is green, that means it's recording. That's probably causing our feedback.
My report is going to be very lengthy this evening. Yeah, so you had a clicker, didn't you? Did I have the clicker? Yeah, it's right there, I think. It'd be easier if I just had a clicker. Yeah, perfect. This is the overview for what I want to go over. I want to give you updates on tuition and fee review, which is a process which the student body president and I, along with our graduate and professional student counterparts, are very eager, are currently jumping into. Then I'd like to give you an overview on the USG financial plan. I had originally intended to do this ahead of consideration of the budget at the last meeting, but I don't know, that never happened. And then I'd like to go through some of my general thoughts on the Budget Act, on CUSO expenditures, just to give you a roadmap for how the Treasury is prepared for the implementation of this act. In general, on tuition and fee review, we are technically still in a holding pattern with the system office. For context, tuition and fee review begins at the campus level, but policy and guidance for that is set at the system office level. So we really don't have the ability to begin requesting fee increase requests and tuition increase requests or alteration requests until such time as the system confirms that guidance. What I will say is I have spoken with a number of people in the administration, and my general understanding is that we should be expecting that process to be a little bit laxer than in past years. And the news of this has gotten out, which means there are, I think, a number of units on campus which are going to try and take advantage of it, and they're not that lax. So my expectation is there's going to be a lot of requests, particularly for fee increases, that are going to not be able to go very far. In terms of our piece of the puzzle, SVAC, I have spoken with my graduate counterpart. He and I co-chair that committee. We are going to be prepared to meet around the schedule for ASVAS TFAT in order to ensure that the primary student consideration occurs. SVAC also, just in terms of some other updates for that committee, currently the food insecurity fee proposal, which came out of this Senate over the summer, that is currently sitting in SVAC. The Joint Governance Council has requested SVAC to deliver a report on that prior to Joint Governance Council's final consideration. I'm meeting with some people in my office to sort of set up an action plan on that. My hope is that that can be heard by the Graduate and Professional Student Senate in some productive manner. But again, the appetite for fee increases across the university seems limited. And decisions will be made in that context. Yeah, and then TFAT and SFAS, we have holds for meeting dates. Those are open meetings. If any senators would like to attend those, let me know, and I'm happy to provide you with some info on that. This just kind of gives a better overview of what tuition and fee review looks like. I like to give the Senate kind of an understanding of it every year. Basically, it begins at the campus level here, October, it'll probably bleed over into November if I'm being very honest, but the campus level consideration really happens in October. And we have to make the recommendations to the chancellor and provost prior to the Board of Trustees meeting in November, which is when those at the campus level, those changes are finalized and then passed along to the system. And then the Board of Governors will consider that in March. I think is usually when it happens. I feel vaguely like this might be out of date or that they're actually now meeting for that in February, but I'm almost positive. In the past, it's always been March. And then in August of next year is when any of those changes will go into effect. In terms of some general things, out-of-state tuition is going to go up. Do I know this for sure? No, but I know this nonetheless. There are varying philosophies at the student leadership level as to whether or not we should support that. Out of state, it's not really a winning political position to say that out-of-state tuition shouldn't increase, if I'm being very honest. So I think we should be transparent about that. It is going to go up. I don't think anything else will go up, except maybe some graduate school fees. Okay, getting into the financial plan. This is what the financial plan is and how it differs from the budget. The budget is a consolidated appropriations bill, along with a policy bill, obviously. Then the financial plan is kind of the overview of how everything over the course of the year, and indeed over the course of several years, how funds are being taken in and spent. So I'd like to go through this with you in the nitty-gritty. Some of this is more official than others, and I'll kind of describe that in the context of where I'd like to go with this. So this is what income and what we currently have looks like. As of the beginning of this fiscal year, which was July 1, this was the amount in undergraduate Senate reserve. That is how much has been accrued. For context. You're only supposed to have up to 3 months operating, which would be, so this is 964,000. I believe like the Senate isn't really supposed to have more than about $125,000 on hand at any time if you go by fee rules for the rest of the campus. Then we come down to the income. And this, funny enough, is actually based on fiscal year 2023 enrollment. My current expectation is that, or actually I know for a fact, that's based on like a 1% enrollment increase. We had closer to a 3% enrollment increase. So this is a conservative estimate of our fee income, but we don't have the full enrollment data for reasons that Rachel Feldman is trying to hide from me. I'm kidding. It's a joke. Rachel's very nice. She's the vice provost for enrollment. Yeah. But it's going to be higher than this. And what we're going to do is any funds over the course of the year which come in above this, and I'll show you the outlook for spending. Any funds that come in above this, we're just going to roll directly into the spring. So that'll all go to the spring, and you'll see why that makes sense here. Ooh. Yes. Okay. So this is just a breakdown of what everything coming in. So you can see is that what the Senate has built up already constitutes a vast majority of what it has, which is concerning because that's not how fees are supposed to work. Fees are supposed to go out the same year they come in. So this is extremely concerning. This is just very concerning. And again, it's kind of a conservative estimate, but very bad. Yeah, so this is what my plan for designation of appropriations and general reserve holding looks like. So this has already been ordered. This is done. The fall appropriations reserve. I allocated $980,000 for that. The Senate has set the resolution rate at 95%, which means that y'all had $931,000 as your budget resolution total. I think you came in very slightly under budget, and that'll all be rolled into the subsequent appropriation cycle. So I think in total subsequent appropriations, we'll have about $60,000 to play with. The Finance Committee chair might be able to correct me. Spring currently is planned to be much less. There's a variety of reasons for this. The first is that money appropriated in the spring is much less likely to be spent ever because they have less time to do the activities and to spend it. It's just much, much less likely that if you give an organization money in the spring, they'll actually end up spending it. And least likely of all if you give it to them in spring subsequent, because at that point, there's like no freaking time to spend the money. So it's good on that basis to allocate less to the spring. But also, I think there's traditionally wisdom that spring requests are lower than fall requests. I don't know if that's really been true over the last couple of years. It's kind of like, at least not quite so significantly. But given those two reasons, that set it much less. And again, if you're worried about what that funding rate is going to be, we know there's going to be a windfall of fee income from enrollment increase that we don't currently have accounted for, and that'll all be rolled into the spring appropriations reserve. Food insecurity reserve by law has to be $20,000. That's its own process, which I believe is happening adjacent to fall subsequent. That's that. So in total, the Senate would be appropriating $1,437,677.75, which constitutes 95% of your reserve, 95% of your income. So 5% held is basically a buffer to make sure that the Senate doesn't go into the red at any time. I'm going to talk a little bit about the meeting we had with our advisors last week about the financial plan, but they had some thoughts on that, and I'd like to share those with you, and I'd be very happy to get your thoughts as well. And again, this matches that revenue side total. And this just kind of is a breakdown of when exactly things will be spent this year. And you can see the great majority of it is spent in the fall. So this budget constitutes the majority of appropriations, really. Yeah. So then we get beyond fiscal year 2024 into a 5-year financial plan. I've spoken to you before about the really significant urgency of the Senate in spending down the reserve. And this isn't going to be done in a year. You can appropriate every cent that you have to appropriate, and it still wouldn't get done in a year. It's going to take several years, no matter what, because organizations are simply never going to spend all of the money they receive in appropriations. So this is kind of my strategic way of thinking about how we get to a point where the general reserve is smaller. Just to kind of go over this with you quickly, maybe. So you're starting off here, as I said, this is fiscal, this reflects all those numbers I just presented to you. Then you assume fee income grows by about 1%. So just from that, you're getting an extra $20,000 a year. So you have more to spend in that sense already. And then FY25, again, what we're holding true is that you're spending 95% of all income, of all reserve and all income goes into appropriations. That there's a 65% expenditure rate. So 65% of what's appropriated is ultimately spent. So that's the average that we're using in my baseline model here. And then, as you can see, there would be, it's a pretty significant reduction over just 2 years. But then it kind of gets trickier to get the money out because you don't have as much leeway to use a cushion as you have much less money left in reserve. So it kind of flattens out, and I'll show you that in a second. But in this world where we're getting that 65% expenditure rate, and I think the expenditure rate is the main item that you have that is going to fluctuate / is the main source of uncertainty. You're still reducing the general reserve by 63% over 5 years, which is fine. If you reduce it by 65% over 5 years, probably no one will take the fee away. But I mean, that's ambitious and assumes a lot. So this is kind of what that would look like graphically. And you can I think it's good to illustrate kind of the rapid reduction quickly, and then it flattens out over time, and then it'll take longer thereafter without maybe some additional changes to get away from it. And a lot of that is just because of the growing fee income. So then here is kind of an alternative. Historically, under the SAFO system, there was about an 80% expenditure rate, which was pretty good. For context, and I'll go into that again, last year we had about a 45% expenditure rate. So 80% would be a huge jump. But the bottom line here, and again, it's assuming the same enrollment growth. The bottom line here is that you're spending down the general reserve to about 81.3 by about 81.3%. And that's ideal. And that's where you're getting to the point where your reserve holding is looking like the operating balance they want you to have on hand. Like 80% is in a lot of ways the ideal target, if not the realistic one, just with the way university expenditures for these organizations has changed. So this would be like the best case scenario. And again, you can see how much steeper that is, and how much faster that would be if we get the expenditure rate up those extra 15%. And then I don't have the schedule for this one, but this is the nightmare scenario. What keeps me up at night? I'm not kidding. This is where expenditures hold, where we have the same expenditure rate. And you can see it basically falls very little. You have an 18.3% reduction in the general reserve. If this is the case, it would be my expectation, and it would be very difficult for any student leader to disagree that the university would explore different avenues for the distribution of the student organizations fee. So this is a nightmare scenario in a lot of ways. And it's kind of the trajectory we've been on, although actually it's been growing because we haven't even been spending that much because appropriations were so low. So this is kind of my summary here. I think the name of the game is expenditure rate. It is like the area where we just have the most room to go in terms of final expenditures. You can't really appropriate much more if you're the Senate, but it's kind of my job / the job of the Carolina Union to try and get to an expenditure rate which is workable. But I also think that this sort of strategic planning and that sort of discipline in maintaining a very high expenditure rate, appropriations rate, is quite important. So that demands fiscal discipline. And I've kind of thinking about this. This is a 5-year plan for a group of people who are on campus typically for 4 years. So how does that work? So I met with the advisors and I'm like, you guys are usually here longer than 4 years. How do you think you can support a 5-year plan like this? And the speaker and the finance committee chair were in that meeting. I felt it was very productive. Their thoughts was that they want to inform principals here. They think that it wasn't necessarily well communicated to past senates that they needed to get money out faster. So they want to do a better job of that. I would also like the Senate to memorialize this, and I will probably work with the Finance Committee chair on that in a non-binding fashion to memorialize and acknowledge a 5-year financial plan, so that posterity can be aware of it in that way. And then finally, it's my job to communicate to future treasurers that this is the sort of long-range planning that we're looking at, for them to add years onto that plan, perhaps. So in terms of preserving a plan like this, that's how that's done, I think. Those are the pieces we're working with, at least. There's also just generally a lot of uncertainty as to this. I don't know if it's going to be 65% this year. We'll know a lot more at the end of this year. And what I'm going to do, because this is considered the preliminary financial plan. Once we have the final financial plan, that is going to be a much more informative view moving forward, just because we've changed the CUSO process significantly. That's going to be a much more informative view than this really is. But we're kind of planning for the planning in that way. Budget Act and CUSO updates. Okay. Starting with the Budget Act, kind of my views on this. I think that we are seeing a pretty positive demonstration of the reforms that the Senate enacted with the Finance Reform and Renewal Act and then the Access Finance Act. There are more requests than ever, which means organizations are more attuned to the process than ever, in my opinion. A greater percentage of orgs, there was a lot of people emailed me very angrily this year about the treasurer's test, but lo and behold, a greater percentage of treasurers had passed the test or were able to present an OT, organizations were able to present an OTR. A greater percent was able to do that than in any year, at least since I've been here. And CUSO is thrilled that we have the consolidated appropriations process. It is so much easier for them and it makes expenditures so much more streamlined. They're really happy about that. Policy provision. So I'm going to give my thoughts on this, and I'm glad senators have brought concerns forward on this. So first of all, Discrimination Prevention Act. This is the stipends measure. I don't remember the exact section number. So this provides the stipends reform that is consistent with the advisory memo, which I issued after SFFA, not SFFA, that is the wrong, that is the wrong litigation. No, after Undergraduate Senate v. Grodsky last year. This is consistent with that. Very good. I understand that there are concerns about a number of the operating policies in Chapter 1, Article 2. And these seem very legitimate. I've had the opportunity to speak with that about that with the student body president, and I think they are well-founded. If there is any part which the Senate must keep, it is the Discrimination Prevention Act. Yeah, I can't stress enough the importance of getting stipends reform done in a timely manner that allows the Senate to plan out what that new process looks like. Just to briefly, I don't think it'll affect honor court. Those can all go into the appropriations for the next year. Summer stipends can, in fact, go into the stipends bill appropriation for the next year. I don't see any reason why that would be out of order. And then the other significant change in the Discrimination Prevention Act is striking the DEI and sustainability criteria from Section 300. I'm sure the Finance Committee Chair would love to elaborate on that further. This is directly responsive to a university mandate that has been communicated to us. If we don't do it, they will. So we're going to do it. Better, I think, for student self-governance to be responsive to that than to go around taking orders. Yeah, the Discrimination Prevention Act is good policy. It is the product of a lot of work and conversations that I've had with the Finance Committee, with the Speaker, with the advisors, and it is a system which provides stipends even in the context of a much higher viewpoint neutrality standard than student government has ever before observed. So it is the process that I think would work for this. And I urge the Senate to pass it in no uncertain terms. In this budget, I will add, like, to be very clear, the budget, like all governments pass policy through budgets. That is totally standard. And I think like this is particularly finance adjacent. And I think like arguments that doesn't belong in there are particularly tenuous. Okay, kind of going into the numbers here, and I hope not to be stepping on the finance chair's toes, but I feel like I just kind of my observations. This compares appropriations versus requests in each category. About 55% on average of all requests were appropriated. And you can kind of see that it's about that much across these categories. Big drivers are travel got a lot cut because I think people don't know how to use the formulas correctly always. Travel is still a big driver though. Programming is going to be the biggest driver. Building and venue rental next to that, I think. But I think I also have it available as a pie chart as appropriations. You can see there's a lot of diverse uses to these funds in the Budget Act. So pretty happy about that. Yeah, so pretty happy about that. It doesn't mean, it's like in the past, there's been concern that organizations would solely rely on the Senate for this or that. And this is not the case. And I think this speaks to the hard work of the Finance Committee and the soundness of existing policy on that. This also, so these charts just kind of illustrate one of my concerns that I've been tracking, which is the breakdown of student government spending versus non-student government or student organization spending. And that's represented in each chapter. And kind of just the point I'd like to make is that student government represents 2% of total, it represents 2% of all organizations which are requesting funds, but 7.53% of all appropriations. And the driver here is stipends. Stipends are a humongous expense which student government is treating itself to. And that's okay. There's merits to that, but it's quite a bit, and it creates a 300% overrepresentation of students in government in these appropriations. And that's concerning. And I think the stipends reform, though that's not really the purpose of the goal, the purpose is viewpoint neutrality. I think, viewpoint neutrality compliance is the purpose there, but I think that this is also going to help more regularly reviewing that and thinking about those appropriations as part of the net budget or part of the net financial plan is going to be pretty useful for these ends. But it's something I'd like the Senate to be thinking about is sort of the iniquity that these stipends are driving. So finally, I'd just like to talk about QSO updates and updates on QSO and on expenditures in general. The QSO controller hiring was delayed. They offered it to someone, they didn't want it. Why do I think this is? And I didn't put this in writing. It's because they're not paying them enough. They are trying to pay them $40,000, and yet they are also requiring them to have a business or finance degree, which is, I don't really think necessary for that role, to be very honest. But like, the opportunity cost of anyone with a business or finance degree taking a job like this is humongous. So I'm not really that surprised. I was kind of worried about that, but it means we've had to restart. Not in here because I just got that update today, is that I understand there are interviews scheduled for the end of next week, which is good to hear. We've provided the framework of categories and the initial introduced appropriations to QSO. Those are being loaded into their processing system now. And then if there's any changes in the final enacted version, those will be sent over too. But currently they are preparing for that. The QSO team is prepared until the QSO controller has been hired to cover any of those duties. So I'm happy about that as well. I don't know how, I think I've updated the Senate before on some of the changes they've made. But one of the things I'd like to draw your attention to is that on the student organizations finances page on Heal Life, there is like a lot of additional information there, more than there ever has been. And there's also a link where you can set up a meeting with them whenever you want, if you're a student organization. And I'm hoping that facilitates communication much, much better. So that's kind of the rundown on expenditures. So I'm going to take queries, but before I do that, there is one thing which I would like to share with you all. And that is that I have made the decision that at the end of the semester, I will be stepping down as treasurer. And I am happy to take questions on that as well. I do this because I have been treasurer by that point for a year and a half. And it has taken a heavy toll on me. It is a very, very time-consuming position. And it is my intention to do that at the end of this semester. I will see us through tuition and fee review. I will ensure that subsequent appropriations go smoothly. And I will be very eager to participate in the selection of a successor. But that is currently my intention. And I felt I should share that with you all in terms of the long-term trajectory for this office. Thank you. Questions? Really none. Yes, Senator Stanton.
For the regards to discrimination, you explained how this all affects, I believe, eliminates previously been charging segments. Can you explain the
Yeah, previously, it affects it and it doesn't affect it. Previously, ONA was specifically tasked with reviewing these, with reviewing stipend rates, and that's when they were codified. They weren't required to bring a bill every year, which was part of the problem. They weren't required to bring a bill every year, but they held hearings on it pretty regularly. What this would do is it would give the Undergraduate Senate Finance Committee, because it is moving money, it's just an appropriations act. It gives the Senate Finance Committee the final say on that, and has to be that way. It's an appropriation. I know I spoke with the ONA chair about the concern that like that means ONA is being sidelined. I don't really see it that way. In my view, like ONA has like jurisdiction over general government oversight matters. I think it is entirely reasonable that ONA could, in advance of Undergraduate Senate Finance Committee hearings, hold additional hold additional hearings on that to advise if that's what the ONA committee chooses. It would not be required for ONA to have jurisdiction over that anymore, though, for them to weigh in on that, but they could. Yeah, but it has to be that way. It's an appropriations act, and that's really the way to do it if you're going to be compliant with the new viewpoint neutrality rules. Senator Grimm.
Yeah, so that's, I think, especially ONA's main concern is it basically takes away our hearing power that we had before and sends it to finance. It gives us an opportunity if we would like to be an additional advisory role, but whereas before it was something that we were doing, now it takes it and gives that to finance, which I think is kind of difficult considering how much finance already has to do, and you're taking one of ONA's main responsibilities and doing that. So what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely understand that. To be very it has to go through finance. Like there's just no way around it. It deals with like a matter that is fundamentally has an impact on the financial plan. It really does have to be in there. Like I think like ONA, I don't know, ONA always does it. They seem to do it out of the goodness of everyone here is doing stuff out of the goodness of their heart. I definitely think ONA can play a pretty vital role in that. I think like ONA, like I could very easily imagine a scenario. There's all sorts of redundancies. There's hearings in both the Rules and Judiciary Committee on a nominee and the Undergraduate Senate on a nominee. That's pretty normal. I would also say that if like this legislation passes, their Senate has like a little bit of like that, as long as like you don't fundamentally affect the timeline for that, like there's no reason that like you can't make an additional legislation to tweak that. But I think the core of the legislation is very sound. It's a great improvement over what we have. And I think like the budget is the right place to do it. As we go into as we're thinking about our financial plan, I think it is like really quite important that we have that a change be made here and now. I think it's really important. Because that ultimately affects like how we're thinking about the financial plan is kind of my thought. I think it makes sense to do it. I don't think it fundamentally takes anything away from ONA. And I think it makes things work better. Senator Hendricks.
So you know that ONA has been responsible for these hearings for the longest time, and now you know that like legislatively it will be quite finance responsibility, but you didn't think it was important to include ONA in this conversation about stipend review.
The Undergraduate Senate budget resolution specifically tasked the finance chair with doing that, and I fully support him fulfilling that mandate. I'll also note it's very easy to think about things as set in stone. ONA was created 8 years ago as a committee at all, as a committee of the Student Congress. It has had the responsibility over stipends for about 3. So, you know, it's not totally out of whack with history. Again, I really don't want it. I think it's erroneous to think about this as anything being taken away from anyone. The ONA has jurisdiction over general government. This is entirely falls within the ONA's committee's ability to hold hearings on this. Like, this doesn't change that at all. Further questions? Vice President Siegel.
Yeah, I have two questions. When did you talk a little bit more about when the P card process is going to come into effect and whether or not we're going to see that like relatively soon? And then second, do you feel confident that there's somebody who can step into your role, how is your academic year and share your responsibilities to be an expert in the past year and almost a half?
I can answer both of those questions. One, P card, not 100% sure on this, but I'm pretty sure it should be available immediately. Once the budget is approved. Okay, I'm going to be very honest. I didn't tell anyone that I was going to announce that to the Senate, and I see the president. Sorry. Yeah, I didn't tell the speaker. Sorry. Yeah. I think there are, and I've worked with a number of people extensively, particularly people in the Senate. I've worked with people over time who I think would be prepared to step into a role like that. I'm not resigning now. I am resigning. I will be stepping down at the end of the semester or near then, on or about. I will not leave until there is a successor who I believe is capable of taking the role. I'm just not going to. I haven't submitted anything. It's my intention to phase out of the role before the conclusion of the term. I don't know. I don't meet all of my intentions though either. Other questions? Yes, Senator Alexander.
For the stipend reform, how would it not affect honor code members if the provision itself is limited to officers who are eligible to receive stipends?
Say it again.
For the stipend reform, how would it not affect honor code members in the first place if it only is if stipend only officers are eligible?
Yeah, that language is maybe misleading. It doesn't mean persons in leadership role in that context. And it explicitly says that any person who transacts, who conducts business on behalf of the university or carries out an official university responsibility, that they can be appropriated stipends. So every person in honor court does that. It is a university function. Every person in honor court, down to the person who wipes the honor court chair's nose, would be eligible for that, in my opinion. I don't think that's a person. I'm just joking. Yeah, that won't affect honor court. It just won't. Yeah, I mean, like, can I guarantee that like rates are going to stay the same? No, but like, I don't see any reason they would be particularly punished just because of the vitality of the role they play to university functions. As Senator Grimm.
Do you think that sort of leaves it up to interpretation?
No, I don't. Officers are like, the term officer is used to name to the term officer is used at various points in the student law to simply refer to someone who is like an official of an organization, and I don't see any reason that would change. Senator McClanahan.
Is the treasurer aware that in section 1101, the insert section 311 subclause A states that the U.S. shall have the authority to issue stipends to officers of the undergraduate, executive, legislative, or judicial branches, or any position which is subject to undergraduate Senate confirmation, which includes honor court, the honor court chair, honor court vice chairs, and honor court members?
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. It'll be fine. Honor court won't be affected by this. Further questions? The honor court, not the attorney general, sorry. In theory, in the status quo, like that's already supposed to happen in the ONA committee. The Senate doesn't, like, those are supposed to be advisory hearings. It wouldn't be mandatory like it is for regular appropriations. Those are like supposed to help inform the undergraduate Senate Finance Committee in crafting that bill. If for whatever reason they cannot, There is like on the advice of other persons who testify, like there can definitely be included appropriations for stipends for them, if that's the concern. No. No. Any other queries? All right, I've taken up a lot of your time. I told you though, I would though. Thank you all. And I look forward to the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Logan.
Testing.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I thought I'd be coming to you all out of breath because I was running from another engagement, but had time to catch my breath. So thank Logan, first of all, for his excellent and thorough presentation. I think he'd be a really good professor. But I will be as brief as I can be today. Just a few different things. First, with the student wellness and safety aspect of things, we convened a committee after the August 28th shooting in which Dr. Yan passed away, unfortunately, in that event. And we convened a student wellness and safety committee with a few different individuals from cabinet and from the executive branch to figure out the best response for executive branch regarding making sure to stand in the gap for students. And we have been working to phase that in through our responses throughout the week. So it was pushed back because of the lockdown that occurred because of the Alpine bagel situation. But we were able to begin phasing that in. We had a letter writing event in the pit that occurred last week on Thursday. It was a two-part event. So we started out in the pit where we asked students to write letters to other students sort of as a bit of encouragement, and then also to the faculty that were affected most closely by the passing of Dr. Yang in the Applied Sciences Department. We intend to distribute those letters to students and then also create a care package that we'll send to Dr. Yan's department along with insomnia cookies and a few other things to show that the student body and the executive branch specifically is thinking of that department and that we're here for them. So that's the first thing. We'll also plan to have a Carolina Ready sort of informational, if you will, social media campaign that goes out over the next few weeks, starting next week. This was mentioned earlier by President Everett, but we are finishing up our second round of general staff applications, and hopefully that will be our last round of applications for quite some time. Our executive branch is almost filled after this closing date on Wednesday at 11:59. We'll review that. We'll turn around those general staff application announcements by Monday or Tuesday, and then we'll be fully filled as an executive branch. So really excited about that. Just a few more reports regarding cabinet affairs, civic engagement and outreach services. There is a voter registration drive that's scheduled for October 6th. One, I'm saying that so that you can all come out in the pit from 12 to 2. Bumble has agreed to sponsor the event and give about $1,000. Bumble, as you may know, I actually learned about today, is a dating and friend making app. So if you need any help in those regards, please make sure to check them out. But they're donating so that we can have food and inflatables in the pit area. So please make sure to support that effort. What else do I have? Let's see. DEI has been working with, I'm not sure if you all are familiar with George Hill Jr. and the passing of George Hill Jr. over the summer due to a deadly car accident in Durham, North Carolina. But they've been working with the family and with the Dean of Students specifically on pushing for a memorial scholarship for him in the outside capacity. But from a student government perspective, looking at how the university handles traumatic experiences, whether it be the death of a faculty member, a staff member, or a student. and figuring out how do we go about making sure to care for that entire situation in an equitable manner. Working with the Dean of Students, specifically Desiree Rickenberg, to figure out the processes that are already in place. And so how we can figure out how to strengthen that and create packages of sorts that go towards supporting the family of those who've been affected. In addition to that, sorry, my handwriting is interesting. Outside of cabinet affairs, I've been working on the Basic Needs Task Force along with Vice President Siegel. I'm not sure if she mentioned it in her announcements. I was a little late, so apologies. But we've both been serving in that capacity. I've been serving specifically with financial literacy and well-being, so working with the Associate Provost for Student Aid and Scholarships, Jackie Copeland. And I'm on a search committee looking for the next director for this Center for Basic Needs that I articulated sort of a presentation around that in the last, maybe, I don't know how many weeks ago, Senate meetings. But that process is going well. We started phone call interviews today. That'll be happening all day tomorrow as well. And then probably in the next few weeks, we'll be inviting individuals to come to campus who are finalists for the director position for Center for Basic Needs. If you don't remember sort of the four-pronged approach that the university is taking with this, though, it is focusing on food insecurity, housing insecurity, the Carolina Emerging Fund, and then finally financial literacy and well-being. So all of these are sort of priorities for the UNC system in general, and therefore are priorities for UNC Chapel Hill as well. So if you have any specific questions about that, happy to answer those. I don't have a full, robust presentation for you at this time, but can answer any questions that you may have about that work. From my office standpoint specifically, there are two main things that we're working on outside of supporting the executive branch. It's a Let's Talk About It series. As you may all be familiar with, the School of Civic Life and Leadership has been a conversation since last year specifically, but even before that, it was in conversation, and it's still moving along steadily. And so we've secured a partnership with the Program for Public Discourse and likely a partnership with the College of Arts and Sciences as well to pursue this Let's Talk About It series. And I'm happy to go in depth on that. I am not prepared to give a full presentation just yet because we're still in the planning stages, but we have a lot of faculty members that are really excited about joining this effort around figuring out how to hold important and productive discourse on campus specifically. In addition to that, we're working with student affairs to hold a grand opening, if you will, for the Center for Basic Needs that will be in the spring. So we're hoping to get a lot of different partnerships from Fidelity, Wells Fargo, Truist. So working to manage that, and that's coming through Office of the Chief of Staff as well. So excited to see how that develops, and we'll have more information to you all on that so that you can spread the word when things are finalized there. Yeah, I think that's all I have in a very quick amount of time. Happy to answer any questions though about anything that I mentioned, because I know I touched on a lot of 30,000-foot ideas. It's George L. Hill Jr., but George Hill Jr. Yes, Senator McClanahan.
Excited to hear that your second round of general staff applications is coming to a close. How many people do you think you'll be able to onboard?
That is a really good question. I don't know the numbers right now. The last time I checked was earlier this week, and that was at like 13. But usually we've gotten a rush of applications at the deadline. So for example, for round one, we had probably 13 applications at this time. And then the day of, we finished off at 53 applications. So couldn't tell you. But what we're probably going to do, there's 4 or 5 open spaces for each cabinet department. So there's 6 cabinet departments. So around 24 people onboarded. Other questions? Well, thank you so much. If you have any questions, you can email me at cwilliams1@unc.edu or usgcos@unc.edu. It is really good to be in person in this amazing room. Thank you, Speaker Gary, for being able to make this happen. I know it took a lot of work behind the scenes, but really excited to see everyone here and hope to see you all over the next few weeks.
We will now move to the report from the USG Director of State and External Affairs.
Can I like share this desk with you? You don't mind? Um, Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I can't contain my laughter. This is, hey. All right, so let's get to it. State and External Affairs coming up. I'll be meeting with the CCC, me, as well as the Deputy Director of State and Local Relations. We'll be discussing the social host ordinance, which I'm going to talk about in a second, as well as other CCC. It's like the first CCC check-in. So we'll be talking about that as well with the Downtown Chapel Hill Partnership. For those of us that don't know, CCC is the alcohol prevention group through campus. I recently spoke with Natasha Young for ways that the undergraduate student government can assist with civic engagement in the civic engagement working group space, specifically as election day approaches. We are also currently working on ways perhaps to educate students here about the Chapel Hill town bureaucracy, as well as educating everyone, students on how to like go to the polls, what they need at the polls, et cetera. So be on the lookout for that, I guess. We're hoping to invite Valerie Fouchi here this semester to come and talk to us about civic engagement. We are about to email her, so be on the lookout for that. Valerie Fouchi, that's our congresswoman. For those of us that don't, sorry, I don't mean to be condescending. I was trying to make a joke. But we are currently also trying, after Speaker Gary and I have had a few discussions. He has given me great ideas that I really needed. We're supposed to be getting we're trying to put together perhaps like a research report that discusses communication between the town of Chapel Hill, as well as Orange County Sheriff, as well as Chapel Hill Police, that to make information such as that more accessible, specifically following the events of earlier this month. And that would be just like a report, and that would also not really, it would be more low key. I mean, unless someone's trying to like publish it and advertise it, but yeah. And just to add a few more things, UNC System President Hans is interested in tackling cyberbullying. Current conversations include a potential system-wide ban on Yik Yak and other anonymous messaging apps, and that President Everett is also working on understanding this initiative and how it impacts Carolina. For those of us that don't know, President Everett's for Carolina for everyone. Sorry. Love it. And I just want to also add in, as far as 1104, I want to echo what President Everett was saying, as well as just add a couple more things. Obviously, I just want to say I trust Speaker Gary because he used to be on State and External Affairs. For those of us that don't know, not trying to expose you, sir, but so, and I also just want to say, like, obviously part of my duties, it is to advise the undergraduate senate as well. It says that in the code. I looked it up before I got up here. So I do want to say that one thing for sure, two things for certain. The current social host ordinance hasn't even been proposed yet. And one thing that would be concerning would be by mandating this, first of all, I'm trying really hard. Obviously, we haven't even met yet as a working group for social host ordinance. And second of all, if we are to impose something like this, because it hasn't been brought to town council, and by saying that we should, the State and External Affairs Office should be working on something else, it kind of gives it a little bit of legitimacy. And if we don't want it, and we're giving it legitimacy, we shouldn't be doing that. So if that argument did not flow for you the way I just said it, please ask me a question. But essentially, it hasn't been presented to the town yet. And there's also an election that's about to take place for town council, which will perhaps lead to a shift in who is on town council. And this was also sprung on me as well. But yeah, please ask me a question, but you don't have to. Also, hey, Damon, I sent you an email. Please email me back. Thanks. All right. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
We will now hear the report of the undergraduate student attorney general.
All right. Just to introduce myself for those of you who don't know, my name is Matthew Kenigsuff, and I'm the undergraduate student attorney general. So I'll just start off with a couple of the logistical things just to get that out of the way, and then I'll talk a little bit about what we've been doing. So currently from my side, we have 38 cases pending hearings and 8 cases pending charges, which is significantly down from towards the start of my tenure. We've already been through approximately 110 cases since since I've been in charge. I'll also speak for the undergraduate honor court chair is not present tonight, so I'll also speak for the hearings that we have. I believe we ran 3 hearings or 2 hearings last week and are planning to run 3 formal hearings this coming week / tonight / hopefully one is already finished. And then broadly, things that we've been doing, just as I think most organizations and branches in general are working on currently. We're working on training and recruitment. Hopefully my branch will be accepting around 15 to 20 new councils in the next couple weeks. So that's consuming a lot of our time in addition to the various cases that we have occurring. I'll also speak as to the funding bill, just as we've already had a great deal of communication about that and about how it may affect the honor system. I think Treasurer Grodzki addressed some of my questions already. So I would just like to air the point of view of the honor system in that. Perhaps the language in there already satisfies this, but I just want to make it clear the position that the honor system has, so that when you all, because that is really your job, make the decision on the language, you are aware of what exactly the honor system needs and how exactly it may affect us. So and I've spoken with Speaker Gary. I think next time probably I will go over more in depth as to everything exactly that we do, because I think there's been somewhat of a lack of communication between our 2 branches as to what exactly we do, how important exactly the work we do is. But essentially the honor system in general has an interest in having our summer staff be appropriate stipends. This has been something that's been in effect for at least as long as I've been at UNC, and I assume quite a little while longer. Essentially, the staff members work in their exact same positions as they have during the course of the year over the summer, and they receive stipends for that. They are not members of leadership, although potentially could be deemed a member, an officer of student government. I'm not completely sure as to that, but trust what Treasurer Grodzki has said. But they're not members of leadership in any way. They're just simply serving in the same roles that they have during the school year, because the honor system does not stop getting reports during the summer. If anything, we deal with a lot more cases over the summer. So this is essential work. This is essential that they get paid. It's not any difference to their positions generally, which has been thoroughly vetted by myself and as well as my leadership team. They're simply working over the summer. Furthermore, I know the hours are not exactly of concern, but they do receive approximately 50 cents an hour for the work that they do. They do work approximately 10 to 15 plus hours a week, with considerations as to how many we have during that given semester. So this is essential for them to receive this pay. This is incredibly hard work. And again, I'll speak more as to what exactly we all do next time, but And again, perhaps the language in the bill reflects this and is perfectly fine for what the position is, but just to make it clear how important it is that they continue to receive stipends for this. But yeah, so I think that's about all for me. I can take any questions that you guys may have.
Are you aware that under the to be inserted section 311, it states that the U.S. shall have the undergraduate senate shall have the authority to issue stipends to any position which is subject to undergraduate senate confirmation. So this very clearly encompasses the chair, vice chair, members of the honor court, and any position under that office.
Again, that's not my expertise. I'm not exactly sure how that all shakes out. I know Treasurer Grodzki has spoken to this, and if that does indeed eliminate the summer stipends, then that seems to me that would be unacceptable.
Are you aware of it? That as Treasurer Grodzki said, that very clearly allows for summer stipends to be issued.
Can you say that one more time?
As Treasurer Grodzki mentioned, that does very clearly allow for the provision of summer stipends.
Yeah, and I think if that does clearly provide for summer stipends, then I don't particularly have an issue with that. I just want to make clear the honor system's interest in this whole debate.
For those who don't know, can you speak to how the people in the Attorney General staff, such as your case managers, are not people confirmed by the Senate and thus do not fall under that language? And how we have been working with you in the O&A committee for several months now and trying to fix that to start.
Yeah, so thank you, Senator Hendricks. Again, I meant to have this kind of long speech next time to not take up too much of you guys' time tonight, because I know we've all been here for quite a while already. But yeah, so essentially to explain the structure of at least my branch. There are three positions within leadership of the Attorney General staff. So there's, of course, myself, the undergraduate student attorney general. There are the deputy student attorney generals, which are who are currently stipended by the undergraduate senate, and then there are the case managers. The case managers are not stipended, do not receive stipends from the undergraduate senate. While they don't hold quite the leadership position that myself or the deputies do, they work pretty close to the same amount. I would say not quite as much as myself, but relatively close to the deputies. I would say, it's increasing actually, because we have had an increase in cases lately. It's difficult to judge exactly how many hours they work, but I would say currently it's probably at least 10 a week or so. And again, they do not receive stipend. They are members of leadership. They are not confirmed by the Senate, and I would really prefer to keep it that way, because it's not a position where as like a attorney general or a deputy attorney general, where they are interacting with the Senate, is not necessarily a position that they hold for a set amount of time. They can come and go depending on their performance. It's also a position where we have 8 or so at a time, give or take a few. And yes, so Senator Hendricks and I have been working on trying to get them stipends because of the just actually insane amount of work that they do. Again, I would say that the councils during the summer receive about 10 to 15 hours worth of work. Case managers definitely do that year round, and it only increases during the summer. This is an exceptional amount of work, and it's frankly ridiculous to do as an undergraduate student. I have been in that position. I have worked upwards of 18 cases simultaneously, which is a good amount, but is not entirely uncommon among the case managers. And that's with having, most of them are having a hearing once a week, once every other week, that lasts, 4 or 5 hours at a time. This is a great deal of work. So again, I am not an expert on the language in the bill per se, but it is the position of the honor system that if I can speak for my counterparts, the branch leaders in the honor system, that this is very important that this bill accommodate that and allow for the case managers to receive these stipends. Yeah. Well, they don't work per se for the executive branch, so I'm okay. Yeah, so I mean, again, that is not my expertise. It's simply my position that that needs to be a possibility under this bill, that they are able to receive these stipends as well as the summer staff.
The positions in question for this are DSAGs and case managers, correct?
DSAGs or deputy student attorney generals are already receive stipends from the undergraduate senate, and they are confirmed by the Senate. Case managers are neither confirmed nor do they receive stipends for their work.
But just to make sure I have this, because I would like to know this for the consideration of legislation later, what you specifically would want to ensure is that case managers as a role have the opportunity to receive stipends, correct?
That's correct. Case managers and especially the summer councils. I also, perhaps long run, would like it to at least be a possible discussion for councils to receive some kind of stipend, but at the very least, reserving the right for case managers to receive stipends and for summer staff to receive stipends.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, seeing none.
Okay, seeing as the Honor Court Chair, Honor Court Outreach Coordinator, and Student Government Advisor are not present, we will proceed to the receipt of petitions and messages. There was one, we'll call it a paper addressed to the Senate, sent to me from Kunal. Kunal is up for nomination for the Dean of Arts and Sciences Advisory Committee and the Student Stores Committee. The paper consists of the following. Hi, Andrew. Forwarding testimony for DASAC and Student Stores Committee as I have a class conflict. Unfortunately, due to a class conflict, I will not be able to attend Senate for my confirmation hearing for Student Stores or DASAC. However, I would like to provide written testimony as to my eligibility and qualifications. I have worked with the Vice President's office for 2 years, serving on DASAC as a first-year Carolina student. I am extremely excited to not only improve student quality, but also focus on helping students learn in a safe and healthy environment. I look forward to my time on these committees and meeting you soon. There were no requests for 3-minute speeches. Is there anyone here for public comment period? Seeing no one is here for public comment period, at this time, would someone be willing to move to reorder the agenda such that item USD 105077, I believe, is moved to now?
So moved.
Motion has been properly moved and seconded. Without objection, we will reorder the agenda as such. Does the Vice President wish to introduce the nominee?
Mr. Speaker, point of order. Pursuant to the newly adopted standing rules, the committee chair should be recognized immediately after speaker states the question to state their report.
That is correct. Chair Graham, can you, under the new standing rules, all committee chairs have to provide a report on legislation passed. Your committee reported this without prejudice. Can you basically?
Yeah, so any candidate who was brought forward for a nomination. We reported them without prejudice if they did not show up for the meeting. So I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more from you as well as any other members who we did without prejudice. Is that good?
As a note, that's essentially what you say in the case of nominations. If they weren't there, you just say we reported them without prejudice because they were not present, and then the vice president can do their thing.
Yeah.
We're gonna bring you a mic.
Yeah, for Isabel?
Hi, I'm Isabel. I'm excited to join the committee. And if anyone wants to answer some questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the docket item by unanimous consent.
Second.
I feel like that was the most well-deserved nomination ever for sitting through that entire thing.
And with that, we are now in line for the approval of the minutes from the 8/31/23 meeting of the Undergraduate Senate. Is there a motion with regards to those minutes?
Motion to adopt.
We are now in line for the Committee of the Whole. Is there a motion?
Motion to enter committee of the whole.
A motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
We are now in line for consideration of USR 105072, a resolution concerning the affairs of the Undergraduate Senate, having been introduced by Chair Baruch. The sponsor is recognized to present the bill.
Should I go up or can I just like chill here?
You can chill there.
Sick. This is in essence just a bill kind of clarifying the role of the Senate in communicating information about the code to executive branch. There was some miscommunication previously regarding the Senate's role in elaborating what should or shouldn't be done by the executive branch per student code. And this kind of just clarifies that the student code is final. It is not, it should not be the Senate's responsibility to clarify things, and the Senate actually should not take a stance on clarifying things, even if asked. It's not, it's not our place to tell them what they should or shouldn't do. That's the code's role. It's not ours. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, I'll take them, but it's pretty simple.
At this time, are there any questions for the sponsor? Then if there are no questions at this time, are there any points, motions, or discussion on the floor?
That is considered friendly.
The motion is adopted and the resolution is so amended. Are there any at this time, are there any points, motions, or discussion on the floor? Do I hear a motion?
Move to report favorably.
At this time, is there a motion with regards to the consent calendar?
Second.
We are now in line for consideration of USD 105078, confirmation of Nicole Corsi as a member of the Campus Recreation Advisory Council for the 2023-2024 academic year. Rules and Judiciary Chair is recognized.
The nominee was supported without prejudice due to absence at the committee meeting.
Does the Vice President wish to comment? All right, are there any questions?
For the Vice President, for consideration at the next R&J meeting or the next full Senate meeting? All right. Then in that case, I move the docket item be re-referred as such.
Motion is to re-refer the docket item to committee. Is there a
Second.
We are now in line for consideration of USD 105082, confirmation of Andrew Wang as a member of the Dean of Arts and Sciences Advisory Committee for the 2023-2024 academic year. The Rules and Judiciary Committee Chair is recognized.
The nominee was supported without prejudice due to absence at the committee meeting.
The Vice President is recognized.
Hello, my name's Andrew, and I'm majoring in economics and mathematics, and I feel like I will be a strong candidate for the position. Thank you.
What sort of goals do you have on the DASAC?
So I believe the main goal is to enhance the clarity of the course and registration process, which will be a paramount importance in ensuring the smooth operation of the academic institution. And in my opinion, there are several necessary steps to achieve this goal. First, we have to assess the current registration process and identify the weak points. Next, we will need to review and update registration policies and possibly improve communication with students and faculty members about the clear guidance. And I think at last, it will be beneficial to establish a feedback mechanism for continuous improvement.
Motion to suspend the rules and confirm the nominee.
Second.
We are now in line for USD 105083, confirmation of Kunal as a member of the Dean of Arts and Sciences Advisory Committee for the 2023-2024 academic year. The Rules of Judiciary Committee Chair is recognized.
The nominee is supported without prejudice due to absence at the committee meeting.
The Vice President is recognized. Are there any questions? And if there are no questions, is there a motion?
Motion to suspend the rules and confirm the nominee.
Do I hear a second? Without objection, the nominee is. We are now in line for USD 105-086, confirmation of Damon as a member of the Provost Advisory Committee for the 2023-2024 academic year. The Rules and Judiciary Committee Chair is recognized.
The nominee was forwarded without prejudice due to absence of the committee meeting, specifically because he was chairing an O&A committee at the exact same time.
Vice President is recognized. Chair
It was
Graham,
a
you're
little bit nicer than I would have been to myself, but I've really enjoyed just our first meeting in this committee and looking forward to doing more throughout the year. Any questions?
If there are no questions, is there a motion?
Motion to suspend the rules and confirm the nominee.
Without objection. We are now in line for USD 105-089, confirmation of Radula as a member of the Provost Advisory Committee for the 2023-2024 academic year. The Rules and Judiciary Committee Chair is recognized.
Nominee was reported without prejudice due to absence of the committee meeting.
Vice President is recognized.
I recognize Speaker Gary to speak on the nominee.
I would just like to speak highly in favor of the nominee. She is my legislative director in the Office of the Speaker and has done a phenomenal job so far and has many great ideas for our campus.
I motion to confirm the nominee by unanimous consent.
Second.
Without objection, the nominee is confirmed.
We are now in line for USD 105-090, confirmation of Christopher as a member of the Provost Advisory Committee for the 2023-2024 academic year. The Rules and Judiciary Committee Chair is recognized.
Once again, the nominee is reported without prejudice due to absence at the RNJ meeting.
The Vice President is recognized. If there are no questions, is there a motion?
A motion to confirm by unanimous consent.
Second.
Without objection. We are now in line for USB 105-094, the Carolina Strong Fall 2023 Budget Act. A few notes before we begin discussing this bill. A special rule was adopted at the last Senate meeting that governs the process for debate and amendment of this bill. I will now review some of those provisions, just so that we're all clear on how things are going to proceed. I'm just going to pull it up on the big screen so everyone can see it. As you can see, this rule lays out that any amendments to this bill had to be provided to me in writing 24 hours prior to the beginning of the meeting of this meeting. Those amendments had to be submitted to me in the form of a .doc or .pdf file, which also included the full name of the senator, the district the senator represents, and the date of submission. And there is a germaneness provision which states that amendments shall only be considered germane if they pertain to the provision of funds to student organizations. In the debate provision, there are some speaking privileges rules. During all aspects of the consideration of the budget bill, the USG treasurer, as well as the advisor, or any certified organizational treasurer of a student organization which received funds may be granted speaking privileges. And the finance committee chair actually leads debate and questioning, but they reserve the right to yield that privilege to any senator at any time.
Just a point of privilege, that provision BB is actually in the standing rules right now.
Thank you for that clarification. There are some additional rules that govern the consideration of the budget bill that are in the code that I will now also go over. The first thing to note, and that I want to call your attention to, is that this clause here, subsection E, states clearly that should we fail to pass the budget bill, clause F, my bad, the semi-annual budget process shall immediately end and all money will be returned to the appropriations reserve. What this means is that if we do not pass this bill, no one gets any money. I just wanted to make that clear for everyone going into this, because that is a, we're going to call it significant provision. Yeah, I believe that is all of the major provisions. If anyone would like to make a note now of any major rules that apply to the budget bill that I've missed, I would please ask you to do so now so that everyone is very clear as to what the process is.
I will actually note one bit under, hold up. Rule 43.1, presentation of the budget bill is the primary standing rule that governs the presentation of the budget bill. So just some things to note here is that during the period in which you are considering the bill and once you move any amendment, the time for consideration of the amendment, the person who moves the amendment controls 5 minutes of time for the purpose of supporting amendment, and the mover of the motion to be amended controls 5 minutes of time for the purpose of opposing amendment.
Could you state again which rule that is? I want to just put up on the screen real quick.
Rule 43.1 of the Senate Standing Rules, presentation of the budget bill.
Thank you. Yes, the treasurer is recognized. That is also a great reminder. If you have not passed the treasurer's test, you will not be able to vote on this item of legislation. We have an up-to-date list of that already. So when we tabulate votes, we'll make it clear who is eligible to vote. If there's no objection, I will open a very brief question period if there is any questions.
Does that count towards our quorum numbers?
It does not. If there are no questions, we will proceed to the consideration of the budget. Okay, I'll answer the first question about the amendments process. Per the rule, any rulings that I make as to the provisions of, per the special rule, so I'll make a distinction between the special rule and the standing rules. Per the special rule, any ruling made by the speaker or presiding officer may be overruled only upon a 2/3 vote of senators present and voting. For the standing rules, I believe that threshold is only a simple majority.
That is correct. It takes a simple majority to suspend parts of the standing rules, and it takes a 2/3 majority to overturn the speaker's decision under any ruling made under a special rule.
That is my understanding, and that's how I'll operate. I will, so conferring with the pro tem, it seems that that is the case. Yes, as this is an appropriations bill. Yes, I will, hold on. I'll read, we'll yield to the pro tem first and then the RJ chair.
As a further point of information, the treasurer's test applies to finance legislation. And as the Budget Act is a piece of finance legislation, you would be required to pass the treasurer, well, any senator voting on any amendments to the budget bill would have had to pass the treasurer's test.
So to make sure I understand the question, basically, if let's say an amendment was submitted and I ruled that out of order, would you have to have passed the treasurer's test to vote on overriding the rules? Seems like there's a lot of hands. My interpretation right now, I would like to confer with my parliamentarian afterwards, is that you would not need to have passed the treasurer's test to vote on a suspension of the rules. Yes. The Rules and Judiciary Chair, then the ONA Chair.
So I just want to read off Section 520 of Title V of the USG Student Code. If senators fail to pass the treasurer's test, they will lose their voting rights on finance bills. The term voting rights on finance bills, it very obviously continues to the final vote on a finance bill. And I would consider voting rights on finance bills to extend to voting rights on subsidiary motions relating to finance bills. Like this specifically means an amendment to a finance bill or any amendments to that amendment, which are higher order amendments. The ruling determining whether or not the ruling of the speaker is correct as to whether an amendment is in order. An appeal is considered an incidental motion. It's not a subsidiary motion. It is not a vote on the finance bill. That's a gray area essentially.
So we talked about what happens if this bill does not pass tonight, but what if the bill is not voted on tonight?
Let us pull up the code.
I will actually say this. It is not in order to postpone the budget bill to a new meeting.
What if there's no quorum to vote on it?
It would become unfinished business.
Which would get pushed to the next meeting?
Yes.
And amendments could be added 24 hours in advance.
Might I remind everyone here that continuing to postpone this bill is pretty bad for every single student organization we represent. As someone who sat in on many hours of finance hearings, a lot of organizations were kind of towing the line on if they were going to get funds in time for it to be considered not like paying back. They can't use funds that we give them to like pay themselves back for something that happened. And there are several significant organizations and many smaller ones that have events happening in this time period. It is just my recommendation that, as is our job as representatives of the student body, we get this done tonight, no matter what's required, because that just sucks for people who are not here and they don't like deserve to have repercussions of, whatever is going on here today, like affecting if they get money or not. And if, they're out of pocket like $4,000.
Well, that's, I think, one of the concerns of what happens by
Chair, you're not recognized. I'm sorry. Like we're not in discussion right now. Like there are other people who had their hands up.
My question still wasn't answered.
Well, could you please restate your question?
If the bill doesn't pass tonight because it's not voted on and it gets moved to next time, then the appropriation cycle is technically not over until this gets voted on, correct?
The code says that should the vote to pass, well, the fill fail. So I would say yes. At this moment, I would
And
say.
the other question with that too is if the bill got postponed and it got moved to unfinished business for next meeting, then there would technically reopen that period for 24 hours of amendments, correct?
I don't see why not. Yeah, that makes sense. That is my understanding. The treasurer has had his hand up for a while. I'll recognize him briefly.
I would like to urge the Senate that to not pass this legislation in some form tonight would be in no uncertain terms quite catastrophic on a number of levels. And I do not think that this should be entertained. I can go through dozens of emails with student organizations. That's just stuff I have memorialized where we have expressed to them that they are likely to have their funds available after today. They were all told that this was the date when the budget bill was scheduled for consideration during their finance committee hearings. This is 250 student organizations, which are expecting with high probability, because this is how it always works, that they receive their funds tonight. Beyond that, we have sent out to 900 student organizations an email saying that subsequent appropriations will begin this weekend, which will become unlawful if there is not a budget passed at this time. No, I must insist, and I beg the Senate that do what you will, machinate as you will, but this budget should be passed tonight. It will cause extreme disruption to organizations across campus to do anything otherwise. Separately, just speaking to the budget resolution, I would just like to point out that, not the budget, the special rule, it specifically says senators present and voting, which I believe would pertain to whether or not the current question, even if the motion is incidental rather than subsidiary, I believe that the matter would be that, like, if they don't have the right to vote on.
The rules of judiciary chair is recognized.
I will just add that under the standing rules, you can make a motion to suspend the entirety of section 1A of the special rules. That would take a 2/3 majority, but that would essentially disable the entire germaneness mechanism.
Ethics chair is recognized.
I would like to echo Treasurer Grodzki. I think that there is a lot of discussion that needs to happen, and as Chris said, make the changes that people want here. For senators, if you leave during this, that is considered an act of nonfeasance, and I will open an ethics investigation, okay? This is really important. This affects more student organizations than any other thing we're doing. And there are changes that need to be made. We can make those changes. We can suspend rules. We can make amendments. Leaving this will be considered an act of nonfeasance, which is a failure to act or fulfills one duty that is required of the Senate for us to get this passed, right? We need to get this done. We can make amendments as necessary. We can suspend rules, but please do not leave to try to make this be pushed back, because that causes serious repercussions for thousands of students on campus.
Senator Hendricks, you're recognized.
Might I?
Or if you have it already up, can you just read it? Sorry, Pro Tem has the list.
I have the list in front of me. I can read off who is, well, If you give me a second, I can have it up on the screen.
Okay, we have it up on the screen now. Um, it's
For senators, you can view this list on the Senate Drive by going to the current meeting's voting and attendance record to see if you have passed the treasurer's test.
yes. The Cal, can you come up here? Come up here.
Quick point of clarification. This is the 90% one for being on the finance committee. I'm gonna go pull up the 80% one because this is slightly more problematic than it actually is.
If someone would move for, let's call a 5-minute recess, that would be great.
So moved.
Point of information. My list was gorgeous. We just had it in a spreadsheet misalign. I would like that to be on record. In response to that, are you positive? Because I went through and rechecked everybody's. Did you?
If I may, the code was recently amended such that the grace period just extends for the rest of your Senate term. If you fail the test if you fail to pass the test in the 2-week period, then at any time, if you pass it with a 90%, you get your voting rights back.
Huh.
That's one that's on the voting, that's the updated one right now, right? Yes.
I guess it wasn't perfectly updated. My bad. If anyone else did pass it, Dennis, is it properly? Because I checked, can we just use the one that I have on the ethics spreadsheet? It's in the ethics folder. Because that one is like, I went through and checked, and then we copy and pasted over. Where did you find it, Dennis? It's somewhere. Oh, shoot. Yeah, let me send it to you, Andrew.
If I may, I would just like to add, if we have unanimous consent, this isn't a problem.
It has been forwarded. And on the real spreadsheet, Ben, you are good. Yeah, thank you for speaking up again. Yeah, that one, as far as I know, is correct. I went through and checked every single person's name during the recess against the actual responses. So cool. And I think on the last one, Speaker Gary didn't pass, which is like very wrong. So yeah.
Any further questions about the procedure we will use to consider the Budget Act or the Treasurer's Test or any other related items? Yes.
So this is that.
That is what the ethics chair tells me.
So it's the one on the.
Yes, the one on the right is the student. This is just like my master test sheet.
Wanted to make sure.
Yes, the one on the left is if you pass the test, or if you passed it within then the 6 week. Apparently that's changed recently. So if you do want to have voting privileges on future finance bills, just keep taking it until you get 90%. I believe in you. As a point on that, you have to pass the 2024 one now, which should have been sent to you by Treasurer Grodzki, I think. So yeah, if you're still trying to get 90%, just do that one, not the 2023 one.
Last call for questions for the budget bill procedure and related matters. All right, seeing no questions, we will actually proceed with consideration of the budget bill. The Finance Committee Chair is recognized for the report of Finance Committee.
Yes, good evening. Okay. The Finance Committee met last Thursday to hear the budget bill, reported it without prejudice after making 2 amendments in Chapter 1, Article 2. And yes, then it was reported without prejudice to the full Senate. Now, as for
the introducer is now recognized.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for sitting here so patiently for now almost 3 hours to get to the real item of business that we're all here for tonight, which is USB 105094, the Carolina Strong Fall 2023 Budget Act. If the either speaker or SPT can scroll to the top for the report of the budget. One more. Yeah, okay. There we go. All right, so this report of the budget goes over some of the top line numbers as to appropriations in terms of dollar amounts and rates. So the total amount of funding that we appropriated in this bill was $920,862.65. This is working within a total budget of 931,000 or 930,000. This means that the amount of funding which would be left in the appropriations reserve should this bill enter law be $60,137.35. It is my intention that all of this money will be used in the coming weeks during the subsequent cycle. And then these are the total amounts appropriated in each category. I won't read them out because that would take forever. Then, yeah, the total amount of funding requested was $1,722,603.01. This put us at an appropriations rate of about 50 to 55%. This was then, yes, section 5 is the total amount of funding requested per category. I also won't bore you with all of those numbers. Following that, we have the average and median amounts. And then in terms of the number of organizations who requested funding, that would be 250 total, 5 members or 5 entities of student government, 245 RSOs. All right. That is it for the top line items. There is also a section for a few policies. It is my understanding several amendments are to be made. Yes, on this policy itself that has been explored during both the recess and prior to it. But with that, I will yield to any questions. Yes, we did not know. I apologize. I'll take that as a question. So student government entities still have to fall under the same funding rates as all other organizations. So we had to fund the Senate at a rate of about 50%, and those t-shirts fell into that 50% that got cut. If there are any further questions? Seeing none. Okay. I would also like to point out additionally that in the policy for student organizations themselves, we have provided section 3100, which would waive the mandatory organizational budget orientation meeting to apply for, be appropriated, and expend USG funds for the subsequent cycle. A number of organizations reached out to me stating that they were unable to attend these hearings, but would still like to receive funds. And it is my belief that it would be fair to these organizations to waive this requirement so that they are able to apply for funds during the subsequent cycle, which will be occurring, well, which applications will be occurring this weekend. Hearings will occur within the next 2 weeks.
Per the code and standing rules, the Finance Committee Chair runs debate and questioning on the Budget Act.
All right, then moving into debate.
It doesn't mean they get to call on people.
Are there any questions? Are there any points or motions?
Mr. Speaker, I move that the rules be suspended such that, notwithstanding any requirements of germaneness, the following amendments be adopted. In Chapter 1, Article 2, make the following amendments. Strike all sections except 1101 and 1108. And in Section 1101, firstly, strike, quote, the Undergraduate Student Government Code is amended such that Title 2, comma, Section 412, comma, subsection A, comma, Clause 3 is struck in its entirety. And in the inserted section 311, and make the following amendments. In clause B, replace quote, finance committee chair, unquote, with quote, oversight and advocacy committee chair, unquote. In clause C, replace finance committee with oversight and advocacy committee. And finally, in clause D, replace FCC with oversight and advocacy committee chair.
If there is no objection to the amendment, and there, sorry, is there any objection to the suspension of the rules? Is there a second to suspending the rules? Seeing no objection, the rules will be suspended and the amendment will now be considered.
Point of order. The motion to suspend the rules also adopted the amendment as a part of itself.
Even better. Allow me one moment to make the adjustments on the screen. Is that amendment correct?
Allow me to review. It is correctly adopted.
At this time, are there any further points or motions or discussion?
I move to amend the numbering of section 1108 to reflect its current, well, new numbering of section 1 to section 1102, given that those sections have been struck.
Point of order.
Yes.
Speaker Pro Tempore, you are not allowed to make motions on this. You did not get a 90% on the treasurer's test.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
I move a suspension of the rules such that notwithstanding any requirements of germaneness, the amendment proposed by the Speaker Pro Tempore is adopted.
Is there a second?
Second.
If there's no objection, the amendment will be adopted.
Love you, Dennis.
At this time, are there any further points, motions, or discussion? If there is none, is there a motion?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and adopt the budget bill by unanimous consent.
Second.
We are not allowed to vote. Wait, or you're requesting a roll call vote?
All right, and in that case, if there are no further amendments, then.
All right, we will proceed to a roll call vote on the budget. This is not the vote. Do you mind? The pro tem will now call the roll. I can for you while you.
Senator Hagan. I'm going to go ahead and call all senators. If you think you have not passed the treasurer's test, please abstain, and then the ethics chair will verify afterwards. Senator Bennett, Senator Hagan, Senator Hendricks, Senator Henson, Senator Morinville, Senator Nguyen Rakam, Senator Nguyen, Senator Offie, Senator Parapelli, Senator Pierce, Senator Womble, Senator Kim, Senator Stanton,
Keep going.
Chair Forbes, Senator Guskowitz, Senator Jones, Senator Wilson, Senator Alexander, Senator Brandon, Chair Grimm, Senator Manna, Senator McDermott,
Yes.
Senator Nanduri, Senator Smith, Senator Sodano, Senator Langley, Senator Longo, Senator Aurora, Senator Jessup, Chair McClanahan,
Aye.
Senator Paul Lukuri, Senator Schneider, Senator Vespute, Senator Adams, Chair Baruch,
Yay.
Senator Jane, Senator Leonard, Senator Pollock, and that concludes the vote.
By a vote of 14 to 0 to 6, the 2024 semi-annual budget is adopted. We'll double check the votes to make sure they're legal after the meeting. At this time, are there any notices and announcements? All right, I have a couple committee meetings for next week. Don't miss them. Senate meeting is the week after that. Don't miss that either. I think that's all.
I have a number of housekeeping notes. Chairs, please bring back your portable microphones and plug them in over there up at the front. Also, please leave your placards where they are.
I have one last note. If you are confused as to how many attendance points you have, or if you had heard me say your name at the beginning of the meeting, please reach out. I don't want to suspend voting privileges if I messed up in my attendance keeping. So yeah, thanks.
Are there any other notices and announcements? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. We stand adjourned at 10:41 p.m.